Welcome back as we continue our reflection on silence using Cardinal Sarah's book, The Power of Silence. The first meditation was really mainly more so my comments and observations, and now we'll move into the text of the book. And the way I'll do this is just using some texts, and sometimes they're self-explanatory, and other times I will make some comments on it. Like everything I do when I do in teachings, the purpose is for a prayer life. All our knowledge should translate and help us in our prayer life and our relationship with God. Cardinal Sarah makes a point very early in the book that all the world's powers seek to shape modern man systematically to do away with silence. And I think there's a certain truth to it. How much is a design or whatever, I certainly don't know. But 24/7 everything. For me, one of the worst things to do is have to walk through a mall. The mall is the noisiest, not only just in sound, but in smells and colors. I find it exhausting. That's why I rarely go to a mall. And so many ways, the electronic revolution and oh gosh, just even the radio. If you listen to the radio in the morning, the silly talk and the useless comments that are made and pass off for communication. I have a master's degree in communication, actually, and I noticed that the more we have electronic devices, the less we really are communicating. There's a lot more noise, but very little communication. Cardinal Sarah says, a silence is not an absence. On the contrary, it is the manifestation of a presence, the most intense of all presences. In modern society, silence has come into disrepute. This is the symptom of a serious, worrisome illness. The real questions of life are poised in silence. Our blood flows through our veins without making any noise, and we can hear our heartbeats only in silence. So, how much are you aware of you have to fight for silence? When I lead pilgrimages, I often impose silence on the bus and the whole day as best as possible, because you could always talk, but silence you have to work very, very hard for. The desire to see God is what urges us to love solitude and silence. For silence is where God dwells. He drapes himself in silence. Thomas Merton goes on to say, silence is not a virtue, noise not a sin. True. But the turmoil and confusion and constant noise of modern society are the expression of the ambience of its greatest sin, its godlessness and despair. A world of propaganda, of endless argument, criticism, and simply of chatter is a world without anything to live for. That's quite an indictment. Merton, of course, was a Trappist monk who lived a life of solitude and quiet. And while one may not agree totally what he said, I do think there is a lot to be gained from thinking about that. Cardinal Sarah continues, without noise, postmodern man falls into a dull, insistent uneasiness. He is accustomed to permanent background noise, which sickens yet reassures him. Without noise, man is feverish, lost. Noise gives him security, like a drug on which he has become dependent. With its festive appearance, noise is a whirlwind that avoids facing itself. Agitation becomes a tranquilizer, a sedative, a morphine pump, a sort of reverie, an incoherent dream world. But this noise is dangerous. It's a deceptive medicine, a diabolic lie that helps man avoid confronting himself in his interior emptiness. The awakening will necessarily be brutal. Again, that is something that is very, very hard-hitting. I think we could all relate to in some degree of this challenge. We do depend on noise. And it's very difficult for people to be alone with themselves. And it becomes, as Cardinal Sarah said, a certain drug, a certain mood altering experience just throwing on the radio. And it's something to be cautioned, because life is challenging. And when our script or our preconceived ideas of things, which we have to have, goes awry, it forces us into ourselves. And it is a challenge not to fall into confusion and despair. And despair is a terrible, terrible affliction for the human person. But as we are patiently, if we're able to patiently await God leading us out of some interior crisis, silence is going to be necessary. And if you've not had some practice in it, it's going to be very, very painful. I've been telling people for years, since I've been working on the cruise ships with my vacation time, I've been doing it for 15 years now, that it is a practice in solitude and silence for me. The ships I work on, most people are very elderly, everybody's sleeping by 9 o'clock. It's not the Love Boat, nor do I have any interest in really meeting people other than who I minister to. So I spend a lot of time alone, praying, studying. I love looking at the ocean. I do like the adventure of going to other places, but I have often felt that it's a school of quiet for me. Somebody who is a total extrovert, I need hard work to quiet myself, because it's not my mode of operation, but silence is necessary. I think, again, I am going to conclude with this quotation, and maybe I'll do it every time. I like it so much. Abbot Bamberg, I'm not sure if he's still alive, but he was a wonderful man. I got to meet him several times. And his quote is, "The truth is that we can find lasting satisfaction only in the service of that person who alone can fill the measure of our radical solitude, and who is accessible only in silence." Thank you, and we'll see you next time.